My name is Scott Thornbury, and I'm the current series editor for the Cambridge Handbooks for Language Teachers. I also teach on a master's program for the New School, which is a university in New York. So my interests involve teacher training particularly, as well as methodology and language analysis. My interests in language learning and teaching are to do primarily with, well, how do people learn languages, therefore the whole area of second language acquisition, and what is it that they're learning when they learn language. That is to say, what language analysis can bring to the equation. Is it just grammar, is it vocabulary, is it phraseology, etc. So it's the whole thing really, both the process of learning and what is being learned. That's what really interests me. My involvement with the series goes way back to when I started teaching, and certainly when I started teacher training on the courses that I was giving in the 80s and 90s, certificate courses and diploma courses. Many of our key texts were books from the Handbooks series. I'm thinking of those texts by Penny Earl, for example, grammar practice activities, discussions that work, Michael Swan's book, co-written with Bernard Smith on Learn a Language. These were key texts in my development as a teacher and as a teacher trainer. So I was extremely honoured and gratified to become, when I was asked to edit the series, to take over from Penny Earl about 10 years ago. And since then I've been involved, I think, in probably a dozen or more titles as series editor. And this has been a really interesting experience because, apart from anything else, there's a huge variety of subjects that even within these 12 titles that I've dealt with, everything from using dictionaries to technology, ESP, children, activities for young learners, etc. So, and they've often taken me outside my comfort zone. I'm not an experienced teacher of young learners, so it was great working with two writers who were extremely experienced. Similarly, in the area of technology, it was wonderful working with Graham Stanley last year on the book on technology, an area that I don't really know a huge amount about, and I certainly learned a lot working on that book, as I have on many of these titles. One of the interesting areas that came up when we were working on the book, on the technology book with Graham, was how to go about defining the role of technology within language teaching. And it became apparent that the best way of thinking about technology is not in terms of the different technologies and what you can do with a mobile phone and what you can do with an interactive whiteboard, but rather thinking about the different purposes, educational purposes, across the board that are general to all aspects of language teaching, and thinking about how different technologies might support those particular purposes. So this was a kind of, if you like, an obvious way of looking at the way technology should be integrated into language teaching, but in a sense quite an original way, because it's not really, as far as I know, been done before in terms of a book of this kind. So for me it was really, really interesting, because I was introduced to lots of different tools and websites and processes that were completely new to me, but my job was to see how plausible they were in terms of their educational possibilities. And so it was a really interesting experience. The latest book in the series is Translation and Own Language Activities by Philip Kerr, and this is a particularly exciting development, and it's sort of, in a sense, symptomatic of a major sea change in thinking about language learning and methodology that's occurred in the last decade, I suppose. And that is the acknowledgement that learners come to classes with another language, or at least one, if not more, to which their English is being added, as it were, and they're not coming in as kind of blank slates, as 9-month-old babies and with no previous language. So the fact that this is being acknowledged and incorporated into their learning experiences is, as I say, very exciting, very new, and it has lots of implications in terms of methodology. Not least, it, in a sense, not only acknowledges the fact that they have a body of language experience that they can bring to the second language learning experience, but also they have an identity which is associated with their first language or languages, and that this needs to be acknowledged. And by incorporating their languages into their existing languages into the classroom, in a sense, affirming their identity as complete persons and the culture, the language background that they come from. So this is a really exciting development, and it's been really interesting working with Philip on this title. And what else is coming out? Well, we have a title called Language Learning with Digital Video, which is co-written by Ben Goldstein and Paul Driver. And this is, again, a book that focuses on technology to a large extent, but using technology in extremely interesting and creative ways. I worked with Ben previously on his book on working with images, which was to do with still images, and this takes the methodology one step further into working on moving images, if you like. So that's has been a very interesting experience and has exposed me to all sorts of marvelous pieces of footage, and I wish, in a sense, that I was back in the classroom again and I could use some of these ideas myself. And of course, we've got other titles that coming out or have just come out, which are the second edition of Penny Ear's wonderful, famous Discussions That Work, now called Discussions and More, and that one, I'm sure, will be a huge hit, just like its predecessor was.